What if I was reborn as Wally West, Young Justice's Harem King? Make sure to like and subscribe for a part 2 to the story. Arc 1. Welcome to the game, chapters 1 to 12. Chapter 1. The Ultimate Commute. Marcus Chen had always thought the worst part of his day was the soul-crushing elevator ride to his cubicle on the 47th floor. Turns out, getting struck by interdimensional lightning while binge-watching Young Justice at 2 a.m. was significantly worse. One moment he was critiquing Wally West's tactical decisions from his cramped studio apartment, muttering about how Kid Flash could have easily avoided half the team's problems with basic pattern recognition. The next moment, he was face to face with Barry Allen in Star Labs, experiencing the mother of all migraines and somehow knowing that he could run fast enough to break the sound barrier. "Easy there, kid," Barry said, steadying him as Marcus swayed on his feet. The speed-force connection can be overwhelming at first. Marcus blinked, taking in the familiar red suit, the lightning bolt emblem, the concerned expression that screamed, responsible mentor figure. His mind raced, not from super speed, but from the sheer impossibility of his situation. Holy shit, I'm in Young Justice. And I'm, *. He caught his reflection in a nearby monitor. Red hair, green eyes, lean runner's build. Wally West's face stared back at him, but behind those eyes was 26 years of corporate middle management and an encyclopedic knowledge of every episode, comic arc, and character development beat in this universe. "I'm Kid Flash," he said slowly, testing the words. They felt right and wrong simultaneously. "That's right," Barry smiled. "Ready for your first day with the team." The team. July 4th. Mount Justice. Robin, Aqualad, Superboy, Miss Martian. The beginning of everything. Marcus felt a grin spread across his face, not Wally's usual cocky smirk, but something sharper, more calculating. "Oh, I'm more than ready, Uncle Barry. I'm going to change everything." Chapter 2, First Impressions are everything. Mount Justice was exactly as imposing as the show made it look, but standing in the actual cave system instead of watching it through a screen hit different. Marcus ran through his mental checklist as the bioship descended. Tactical Priority 1. Establish credibility without seeming like a know-it-all. Tactical Priority 2. Begin subtle leadership positioning. Tactical Priority 3. Start building individual relationships with team members. Personal Priority. Don't fanboy too hard over meeting literal superheroes. The last one was proving challenging as he watched Aqualad emerge from the water with those iconic tattoos glowing softly in the cave's ambient light. "Kid Flash," Calder greeted him with that formal politeness that screamed, "Future leader. I am pleased to finally meet Flash's protege." "The pleasure's all mine, Aqualad," Marcus replied, offering a handshake that was firm but not aggressively so. "I've heard incredible things about your tactical acumen. Looking forward to learning from you." Robin, God, he looked so young at 13, dropped from the ceiling with typical dramatic flair. KF, ready to see how a real speedster handles a stealth mission. Here we go. Marcus had watched this scene a dozen times. Robin's dismissive attitude, Wally's defensive response, the immediate friction that would take episodes to resolve. Time to change the script. "Actually, Rob, I was hoping you could teach me a few things about stealth," Marcus said casually. "Speed's great for a lot of situations, but sometimes the subtle approach is what wins the day. Your infiltration work in Gotham is legendary." Robin's expression shifted from cocky challenge to surprised interest. Even behind the sunglasses, Marcus could see he'd caught the younger hero off guard. "You want stealth tips? From me? From the protege of the world's greatest detective?" "Hell yes." Marcus flashed what he hoped was an appropriately humble smile. "I can run fast, but you can disappear. That's way cooler." "Huh." Robin seemed to recalibrate his entire approach. "Maybe you're not as crash happy as I thought." Tactical Priority 1, achieved. Building Robin up instead of competing with him immediately shifted their dynamic from rivalry to potential mentorship. Marcus made a mental note to keep stroking the kid's ego, not because he was manipulating him, but because Robin genuinely was impressive and clearly needed validation. Superboy's entrance was as dramatic as expected, emerging from the shadows like some kind of leather-jacketed specter. The hostility rolled off him in waves, all teenage angst and Kryptonian superiority complex. Another wannabe hero, Superboy muttered, crossing his arms. Marcus studied him for a moment. Superboy was maybe the most dangerous person on the team in terms of raw power, but also the most emotionally vulnerable. The clone crisis, the Superman rejection, the desperate need to prove himself, it all radiated from his defensive posture. Superboy, right. Marcus extended his hand. Marcus. Though I guess we're going with codenames. Kid Flash. Superboy stared at the offered hand like it might explode. I don't do handshakes. Fair enough. Marcus dropped his hand without offense. Respect. Sometimes the simple gestures feel too loaded, you know. Especially when everyone's expecting you to be someone else. Something flickered in Superboy's expression. A moment of recognition, maybe even surprise. You get it, Superboy said quietly. I get it, Marcus confirmed. Because I literally watched your entire character arc play out, including all the clone angst and identity issues. We've all got expectations to live up to. Or live down to, depending on the day. Miss Martian's bioship settled into the hangar with that distinctive organic grace, and Marcus felt his pulse quicken. Not just because M'gann was objectively gorgeous in that otherworldly way, but because she represented his first real test of the knowledge advantage he carried. She emerged from the ship in her human form, the familiar red hair and freckles that she'd adopted to fit in. Marcus knew the real reasons behind that choice, the insecurities and trauma that drove her to hide her true white Martian heritage. But he also knew that addressing it too early would destroy any trust he might build. Hello, she said with that sweet, slightly nervous smile. I'm M'gann Maors, Miss Martian. Kid Flash, Marcus replied, offering what he hoped was a warm but not overly eager smile. Welcome to Earth, M'gann. I hope you're settling in okay, big adjustment from Mars, I imagine. Oh, yes, everything here is so different, but good different. Her enthusiasm was infectious, even knowing what lay beneath it. I'm so excited to work with everyone. The feeling's mutual, Marcus said. And meant it. Whatever her real form or past trauma, M'gann was genuinely kind, powerful as hell, and deserved better than the treatment she'd receive once her white Martian heritage came out. Note to self, figure out how to handle the white Martian reveal without destroying team dynamics. Asterisk. Red Tornado's arrival cut through the meet and greet atmosphere like a scythe through wheat. The android's imposing presence and complete lack of emotional inflection reminded everyone that this wasn't summer camp, this was training for a war. Today you will be tested, Red Tornado announced in that distinctive monotone. Your first mission begins now. Marcus felt the familiar thrill of anticipation, but tempered it with strategy. He knew exactly what was coming. The simulated disaster scenario in Happy Harbor, the team's first real test of coordination and problem-solving under pressure. More importantly, he knew where they would fail. What do you think our first mission will be? Robin asked, clearly excited. Something that tests teamwork over individual heroics, Marcus replied thoughtfully. Tornado's big on coordination. My guess is we'll face a scenario where raw power won't be enough, we'll need to think and work together. Aqualad nodded approvingly. A sound assessment. We should be prepared for any contingency. Including the contingency where you all ignore the obvious solution because you're too busy trying to prove yourselves individually. Marcus kept that thought to himself. Better to guide them toward the right answer than lecture them about their upcoming mistakes. Whatever it is, Superboy said, cracking his knuckles, I'm ready. We all are, Marcus agreed. Then, more quietly, he added, but ready and prepared aren't always the same thing. Chapter 3, The Happy Harbor Gambit. The simulation was exactly as Marcus remembered, Happy Harbor under attack by mysterious robots, civilians in danger, chaos and destruction everywhere. The team scattered immediately, each member defaulting to their individual strengths instead of coordinating their efforts. Marcus held back for exactly 30 seconds, watching his teammates make the same mistakes he'd seen a dozen times before. Robin hacked into systems without coordinating with the team. Superboy punched his way through problems without considering collateral damage. Miss Martian tried to help everyone at once without prioritizing threats. Only Aqualad seemed to grasp the bigger picture, but even he was struggling to manage 4 other headstrong teenagers while dealing with his own responsibilities. Time to be the change I want to see. Asterisk. Marcus activated his comm. Team, this is Kid Flash. I've got eyes on the attack pattern from up here. These robots aren't random, they're following a search protocol. What kind of search protocol? Robin's voice crackled through. They're herding civilians toward specific areas while avoiding certain buildings entirely, Marcus replied, zipping between vantage points to maintain his aerial view. Whatever they're looking for, it's not human. That's actually really good tactical analysis, Robin admitted. Thanks, Aqualad. If you can coordinate ground-level evacuation, I can run interference on the robots' search pattern. Confuse their targeting algorithms. Agreed. Calder's voice carried relief at having someone else contributing to strategy. Robin, can you identify what they seek? On it, Robin confirmed. Superboy, Miss Martian, can you handle crowd control while we figure this out? For the first time, the team was actually coordinating instead of just reacting. Marcus felt a surge of satisfaction as he watched their individual efforts combine into something greater than the sum of their parts. The solution, when it came, was almost anticlimactic. The robots were searching for a Kryptonian artifact hidden in the local museum, something that would have taken them hours to discover through individual heroics, but only minutes once they started working together and thinking strategically. Mission accomplished, Red Tornado announced as the simulation ended. Time, 47 minutes, 32 seconds. Is that good? Miss Martian asked nervously. The previous record for this scenario was 1 hour and 23 minutes, Red Tornado replied. Achieved by a team of senior Justice League members. The silence that followed was pregnant with possibility. Marcus caught Aqualad's eye and saw something like respect there. Robin looked impressed despite himself. Even Superboy seemed slightly less hostile. How did you know to look for a search pattern? Aqualad asked as they walked back toward the mission briefing area. Marcus shrugged, aiming for casual pattern recognition. My Uncle Barry always says that villains think they're being random, but they're usually following some kind of logic. You just have to figure out what that logic is. Smart, Robin admitted. Most speedsters just run at problems until they stop being problems. Sometimes that works, Marcus agreed. But sometimes you need to think first, run second. Physics is still physics, even when you're moving at Mach 2. I like him, Miss Martian announced to the group at large. He's thoughtful. Marcus felt his cheeks warm slightly. In the show, McGann's approval had always been portrayed as this massive validation for the male characters. Experiencing it firsthand, he understood why. There was something genuinely affirming about earning respect from someone so naturally kind. Thanks, McGann. You did great out there too, your crowd control was flawless. Her smile could have powered the eastern seaboard. Adequate performance, Red Tornado said, which from an android probably qualified as effusive praise. You will begin regular training exercises tomorrow. For now, familiarize yourselves with Mount Justice's facilities. As the team dispersed to explore their new base, Marcus found himself genuinely excited for the first time since his interdimensional commute. He had the knowledge to help them avoid their worst mistakes, the tactical acumen to improve their effectiveness, and, if he was being honest, the social skills to maybe, possibly, build something better than what he'd watched on screen. This is going to be interesting. Asterisk. Chapter 4, The Art of Not Being Perfect. 3 weeks into his tenure with the team, Marcus was learning that having meta-knowledge was both a blessing and a curse. On one hand, he could anticipate problems, suggest better strategies, and avoid the personality conflicts that had plagued the group in the original timeline. On the other hand, being consistently right was starting to make his teammates suspicious. It's weird, he overheard Robin saying to Aqualad during what they thought was a private conversation. KF always seems to know exactly what to do. Like, always. Perhaps he is simply well trained, Aqualad replied diplomatically. No, it's more than that. He predicted that Clayface would target the water treatment plant last week. He knew the Injustice League would use those specific escape routes. He even called which guard would be compromised at Belle Rev before we got there. Marcus winced from his position around the corner. He'd been so focused on preventing disasters that he'd forgotten to occasionally be wrong about smaller things. Classic overcorrection. Note to self, be strategically imperfect. Asterisk. The opportunity came sooner than expected. During their next mission briefing, a routine reconnaissance of suspected Cadmus activity, Marcus deliberately suggested the wrong approach. "I think we should go in loud," he said, knowing full well it was a terrible idea. "Show of force, get them to scatter, then track where they run." Robin's eyebrows shot up. "That's actually kind of a bad plan, KF. "Yeah." Marcus tried to look defensive rather than relieved. "Why?" "Because if they scatter, we lose any chance of gathering intelligence about their operation," Aqualad explained patiently. "A stealth approach would be more effective." "Stealth is Robin's thing," Superboy pointed out. "And Miss Martian's camouflage abilities would be useful." Marcus made a show of considering this, then nodded reluctantly. "Yeah, okay. You guys are right. I was thinking too much like a speedster, all action, not enough strategy." The relief in his teammates' expressions was palpable. Suddenly he was human again, fallible, someone who could be wrong and admit it. "It happens," Robin said, clapping him on the shoulder. "Even Batman makes tactical errors sometimes." "Lies, but I appreciate the sentiment." Asterisk. The mission itself went smoothly, partly because Marcus knew exactly where the Cadmus facility was located and what they'd find there, but mostly because his teammates were finally relaxed enough around him to function at their full potential. Afterward, as they debriefed in the mission room, Miss Martian floated over to sit beside him. "That was a good mission," she said warmly. "Thanks to you guys catching my mistake early," Marcus replied. "I would have blown the whole operation." "I doubt that," she said softly. "You're always looking out for the team. Even when you're wrong about tactics, you're right about what matters." Their eyes met, and Marcus felt something shift in the air between them. M'gann was beautiful, obviously, but more than that, she was kind in a way that felt genuine rather than performative. Her smile made him want to be worthy of it. "M'gann, KF. Movie night." Robin's voice cut through the moment like a buzzsaw. "We're watching Star Wars. M'gann's never seen it." "You've never seen Star Wars?" Marcus asked, genuinely shocked despite knowing that Martian culture wouldn't include Earth cinema. "Is it good?" she asked hopefully. "It's only the greatest space opera ever created," Marcus declared, then caught himself. "I mean, in my opinion. Some people prefer Star Trek." "What's the difference?" Marcus and Robin exchanged a look of pure horror. "Oh, M'gann," Robin said solemnly. "You have so much to learn." 2 hours later, they were all sprawled across the cave's main living area, watching Luke Skywalker discover his destiny while M'gann provided a running commentary that was equal parts insightful and hilarious. "So the Force is like telepathy, but for everyone?" she asked during the training scene. "Sort of," Marcus replied. "It's more like universal empathy. You can sense the connections between all living things." "That sounds lonely," she said quietly. "Always feeling everyone else's emotions." Marcus glanced at her, remembering her own telepathic abilities and the burden they must represent. "It doesn't have to be. The right connections can make you stronger, not lonelier." She smiled at him, and this time Robin didn't interrupt. Later, after the movie ended and the team had scattered to their respective quarters, Marcus found himself on the beach outside Mount Justice, staring up at the stars and trying to process the surreal reality of his situation. He was living in a cartoon. His teammates were fictional characters come to life. He had knowledge of future events that could save lives or destroy the timeline, depending on how he used it. And somehow, despite all of that cosmic absurdity, the most confusing part was how normal it felt to care about these people. "Cannot sleep." Marcus turned to find Aqualad approaching across the sand, moving with that fluid grace that made it seem like he was still underwater. "Just thinking," Marcus replied. "A lot to process, you know." "Indeed." Calder settled beside him on the sand. "May I ask you something, Kid Flash?" "Marcus." "And sure." "Marcus." Calder seemed to test the name. "You demonstrate tactical acumen far beyond your years. Your insights into team dynamics suggest extensive experience with group leadership. Yet you defer to others and seem content to follow rather than lead. Why?" Marcus considered the question carefully. It was perceptive as hell, and typical Aqualad to cut straight to the heart of things. "Because being right isn't the same as being a good leader," he said finally. I can analyze situations and predict outcomes, but that doesn't mean I'm ready to be responsible for everyone's lives. You are. That's why the team follows you naturally. You think I am a natural leader. I think you care more about the team's success than your own ego, Marcus replied. That's the most important qualification there is. Calder was quiet for a long moment, watching the waves roll in. My king believes I am too young for the responsibilities I have accepted, he said eventually. Sometimes I wonder if he is correct. Age is just a number, Marcus said. What matters is whether you can make the hard choices when they matter. And whether you can live with the consequences afterward. You speak as one who has made such choices. More than you know. We all have to make choices about who we want to be. The hard part is making sure those choices actually matter. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, listening to the rhythm of the waves. Eventually, Calder stood and brushed sand from his uniform. Thank you for the conversation, Marcus. And for your support of my leadership. Thank you for being worth supporting, Marcus replied. After Calder left, Marcus remained on the beach, staring up at the stars and wondering if he was doing the right thing. Changing the timeline was dangerous, but so was letting preventable disasters unfold. The team was already functioning better than in the original timeline, but that success came with its own risks. One day at a time, he told himself. Help where you can, adapt where you must, and try not to break the universe in the process. It wasn't much of a plan, but it was the only one he had. Chapter 5, Artemis and the Archer's Paradox. Marcus knew Artemis Croc was coming 3 days before she arrived. He knew about her family history, her complicated relationship with her father, and the team's inevitable suspicions about her loyalties. Most importantly, he knew that how they handled her introduction would set the tone for months of team dynamics. What he hadn't anticipated was how much the advanced knowledge would mess with his head. We're getting a new teammate, Batman announced during their morning briefing, his voice carrying that distinctive gravitas that made even simple statements sound ominous. Green Arrow's protege. She'll be joining you for today's mission. Robin looked intrigued. Superboy seemed indifferent. Miss Martian radiated excitement at the prospect of another girl on the team. Aqualad simply nodded acceptance. Marcus tried to arrange his features into an expression of mild curiosity instead of the complicated mix of anticipation and anxiety he actually felt. Another Archer? He asked, aiming for casual interest. That's cool. More ranged support is always useful. Her name is Artemis, Batman continued. She's experienced, but this is her first time working with a team. Make her feel welcome. The unspoken, or else, hung in the air like a thundercloud. An hour later, they stood in the mission staging area waiting for their new teammate to arrive. Marcus found himself fidgeting, running short bursts back and forth, checking his equipment multiple times, basically doing everything except standing still like a normal person. You seem nervous, KF, Robin observed with typical 13-year-old bluntness. Not nervous, Marcus lied. Just energetic. New teammate means new team dynamics. Could be good, could be complicated. Why would it be complicated? Miss Martian asked. Because she's the daughter of a supervillain, she's infiltrating the team under false pretenses, and everyone's going to suspect her of being a traitor, which will create trust issues that take months to resolve. New people always change the group dynamic, Marcus said instead. Sometimes in good ways, sometimes not. We've got a good thing going, I just want to make sure we don't lose that. Aqualad gave him a measuring look. You suggest we should be cautious of our new teammate. I suggest we should be welcoming but not naive, Marcus replied carefully. Everyone deserves a chance to prove themselves, but trust is earned, not given. Before anyone could respond, the Zeta Beam platform activated. Recognized, Artemis, B07. She stepped through the light exactly as Marcus remembered from the show, blonde ponytail, green and gold costume, bow slung across her back with practiced ease. But seeing her in person was different from watching her on screen. She was younger than he'd expected, maybe 16, and despite her confident posture, there was something guarded in her green eyes. Team, Green Arrow said, following behind her, meet Artemis. Artemis, meet the team. The introductions went exactly as Marcus expected. Robin's enthusiastic welcome, Superboy's suspicion about replacing Speedy, Miss Martian's genuine excitement at having another girl around. Marcus waited for his turn, using the time to study Artemis's reactions. She was good at hiding her thoughts, but not perfect. He caught micro-expressions of uncertainty when Superboy challenged her about Speedy, relief when Miss Martian offered immediate acceptance, and something that might have been calculation when she looked at Robin. When she turned to him, Marcus offered a simple nod and a genuine smile. "Kid Flash," he said. "Welcome to the team, Artemis. Hope you're ready for controlled chaos and questionable tactical decisions." "Questionable tactical decisions?" she asked, one eyebrow raised. "Hey, we're teenagers with superpowers," Marcus shrugged. "Perfect decision-making would be statistically impossible." She laughed, and some of the tension in her shoulders eased. "Fair point. I'll try to keep up." "You'll fit right in," he assured her, and meant it. The mission briefing was straightforward. Investigate unusual seismic activity in Yellowstone that might indicate supervillain involvement. Standard reconnaissance with potential for combat escalation. During the bioship flight to Wyoming, Marcus found himself seated across from Artemis, watching her try to navigate the team's established social dynamics. She was handling it well, but he could see the effort it took. "First team mission?" he asked quietly. "Is it that obvious?" she replied, equally quiet. "Only to someone who remembers their own first team mission," Marcus said. "The trick is to be yourself, not who you think they want you to be." She studied his face for a moment. "And if who I am isn't who they want, then they're not worth impressing," Marcus said simply. "The people who matter will accept you for who you are, flaws and all. Even if those flaws include a complicated family history." Marcus felt his chest tighten. She was testing him, trying to see if he suspected something. This was dangerous territory. "Everyone's got family complications," he said carefully. "What matters is what you choose to do with the hand you're dealt. What if the hand you're dealt includes things you can't control? Things other people won't understand?" She's asking if I'll judge her for being Sportsmaster's daughter. Marcus chose his words very carefully. "Then you prove them wrong through your actions," he said. "People can overcome their circumstances if they're willing to work for it. The real question is whether you're willing to trust the team enough to let them help you." Artemis stared at him for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. That's surprisingly wise advice from someone whose biggest worry is probably whether he remembered to eat enough calories to fuel his metabolism. Marcus laughed, recognizing the deflection for what it was. "Hey, proper nutrition is a legitimate concern when you burn through calories like a blast furnace. Do you know how much I have to eat just to maintain basic functionality?" "Actually, no. How much?" "Roughly 6,000 calories a day," Marcus replied. "More if I'm doing extended high-speed running. It's like being a human garbage disposal, but with better table manners." "That's actually kind of horrifying," Artemis said, but she was smiling. "The grocery bills are what's really horrifying," Marcus replied. "Barry goes through like 12 boxes of cereal a week." The rest of the flight passed more easily, with Artemis gradually relaxing into the team's rhythm. Marcus made a point of including her in conversations without forcing it, asking for her tactical input during mission planning, and generally treating her like she belonged there. The mission itself was more complicated than expected, not supervillains, but a rogue geological survey team that had accidentally awakened something best left sleeping. The kind of problem that required both combat skills and creative problem solving. Marcus watched Artemis work and was genuinely impressed. Her archery was phenomenal, obviously, but more than that, she had excellent tactical instincts and adapted quickly to working with the team. When Superboy got trapped under a rockfall, she provided cover fire that let Robin get close enough for a rescue. When Miss Martian needed a clear line of sight for her telepathy, Artemis created a distraction that drew their opponents into the open. Most importantly, when Marcus suggested a risky maneuver that would put him in danger to save civilians, Artemis immediately adjusted her positioning to provide overwatch without being asked. "Nice shot," he told her afterward, as they watched the geological survey team get loaded into police vehicles. "Nice trust fall," she replied. "Most people wouldn't risk exposing themselves like that without knowing their backup could deliver." I knew you could deliver, Marcus said simply. How? Marcus considered the question. Because I watched you do it in a TV show wasn't exactly an option. Because you're here, he said instead. Green Arrow doesn't take on protégés lightly. If he trusts you enough to recommend you for the team, that's good enough for me. It wasn't entirely true. Green Arrow didn't actually know about her real background, but it wasn't entirely false either. Whatever her family history, Artemis had genuinely earned her place on the team through her skills and choices. Thanks, she said quietly. That means something. On the flight back to Mount Justice, Marcus found himself cautiously optimistic. Artemis's integration had gone smoother than in the original timeline, partly because the team was already more cohesive, but mostly because addressing the trust issues early had prevented them from festering. He still didn't know how to handle the inevitable revelation about her father, but for now, it was enough that she felt welcomed and supported. One crisis at a time, he reminded himself. Can't solve everything at once. But as he watched Artemis laugh at one of Robin's terrible puns, he thought maybe, just maybe, he was on the right track. Chapter 6, The Weight of Secrets. Living with future knowledge was like carrying a bomb in your backpack. You knew it was there, you knew it was dangerous, but you couldn't exactly tell anyone about it without making everything worse. Marcus discovered this firsthand when Batman called him in for a private debriefing 2 weeks after Artemis joined the team. The Dark Knight's private office in Mount Justice was exactly as intimidating as expected: dim lighting, imposing desk, and that distinctive cowl that made it impossible to read his expressions. Marcus sat in the uncomfortable chair across from Batman and tried to project calm confidence instead of the mild terror he actually felt. Your integration of Artemis into the team has been notably smooth, Batman began without preamble. She's good at what she does, Marcus replied carefully. Makes it easy. Your tactical assessments have been consistently accurate. Your threat analysis predictions have proven correct in 14 of 15 recent missions. Your ability to anticipate enemy movements suggests either extensive experience or exceptional intuition. Oh shit, he's suspicious. I watch a lot of training footage, Marcus said, which was technically true. Pattern recognition is kind of my thing. Batman's silence stretched long enough to become uncomfortable. Marcus resisted the urge to fidget or elaborate, both would make him look guilty of something. The Flash speaks highly of your analytical abilities, Batman said eventually. He believes you have potential for strategic leadership. That's flattering, Marcus replied, unsure where this was going. It's also concerning. Batman leaned forward slightly. You demonstrate tactical acumen that typically comes from years of field experience, yet your official record shows minimal prior heroic activity. You anticipate problems with uncanny accuracy. Most notably, you seem to know things about your teammates that aren't in their public files. Marcus felt his mouth go dry. Like what? Like Miss Martian's insecurities about her appearance despite her shapeshifting abilities. Like Superboy's specific triggers regarding comparisons to Superman. Like Artemis's defensive responses to questions about her family background. Fuck, he's been watching me watch them. I pay attention to people, Marcus said. It's not that complicated. No, Batman agreed. It's not. What's complicated is your consistent ability to predict enemy tactics, anticipate team conflicts, and provide solutions that seem almost tailor-made for specific situations. The silence returned, heavier this time. Marcus knew he was walking a tightrope between maintaining his cover and arousing further suspicion. You think I'm a security risk, he said finally. I think you're hiding something, Batman replied bluntly. The question is whether that something poses a threat to the team. Marcus made a decision that was probably stupid but felt necessary. Everyone's hiding something, Batman. The question is whether those secrets make us stronger or weaker as a team. Elaborate. Robin hides his real name, his civilian identity, his family connections. Aqualad hides his doubts about his leadership abilities and his concerns about living up to Aquaman's expectations. Superboy hides his fears about his genetic programming and his resentment toward Superman. Miss Martian hides. Well, you probably know what she's hiding. Artemis hides her family history and her reasons for joining the team. Batman's cowled head tilted slightly. And what do you hide, Kid Flash? Marcus met his gaze directly. I hide the fact that I care about these people more than I probably should. That I'd do almost anything to protect them. And that sometimes, caring that much makes you make choices that might not be tactically sound but are the right thing to do anyway. It wasn't the whole truth, but it was true enough to satisfy whatever psychological evaluation Batman was running. Noted, Batman said after a long moment. Your loyalty to the team is not in question. However, I will be monitoring your performance closely. Understood, Marcus replied. Is there anything else? Yes. Artemis's background check has revealed some discrepancies. I want your assessment of her trustworthiness. And here we go. Marcus had been dreading this conversation since Artemis arrived. She's a skilled archer, good tactical instincts, adapts well to team dynamics, Marcus said carefully. She's also guarded about her personal life, but that's not exactly unusual for people in our line of work. That's not what I asked. Marcus sighed. Do I trust her? Yes. Do I think she's hiding something? Also yes. Do I think what she's hiding poses a threat to the team? No. Explain. Because whatever she's hiding, she's chose to be here, Marcus said. Every day, she makes the choice to suit up, work with the team, and put herself in danger to help people. Actions matter more than background. Even if that background includes family connections to known criminals. Shit, he knows. Marcus kept his expression neutral. Especially then, he said. People aren't responsible for their family's choices, only their own. If you're going to judge someone based on their relatives' actions, you might as well kick Robin off the team for being connected to all those Gotham crime families through Wayne Enterprises board meetings. Batman's silence suggested Marcus had either made a very good point or a very dangerous one. You're suggesting we ignore potential security risks. I'm suggesting we judge people by their actions, not their DNA, Marcus replied. Artemis has had multiple opportunities to betray the team or sabotage missions. Instead, she's saved our lives, followed orders, and integrated well with the group. Whatever her family situation, she's proven herself through her choices. Batman studied him for another long moment. Your faith in your teammates is admirable, he said finally. I hope it's not misplaced. So do I, Marcus admitted. But faith without risk isn't really faith, is it? After the meeting, Marcus found himself back on the beach outside Mount Justice, staring at the waves and trying to process the conversation. Batman suspected something, but not the right something. That was good, probably, but it also meant he needed to be more careful about displaying his meta-knowledge. Penny for your thoughts. Marcus turned to find Artemis approaching across the sand, bow slung across her back and an expression of mild concern on her face. Heavy conversation with Batman, Marcus replied. Nothing I can't handle, but, you know, it's Batman. Yeah, I know. She settled beside him on the sand. He talked to me too. Asked a lot of questions about my background, my training, my motivations for joining the team. I bet he did. Marcus glanced at her sideways. Everything okay? That depends, Artemis said carefully. How much do you know about my family? The question hung in the air between them like a loaded weapon. Marcus could feel the weight of her anxiety, the fear that he might already know her secret and be waiting to use it against her. I know your family situation is complicated, he said finally. I know you don't like talking about it. And I know that whatever it is, you're afraid it'll make the team trust you less. That's surprisingly perceptive. I pay attention, Marcus said. The question is, do you want to talk about it? Artemis was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the waves. My father is sportsmaster, she said eventually, her voice barely above a whisper. Marcus felt his chest tighten. Even knowing it was coming, hearing her say it out loud hit differently than he'd expected. Okay, he said simply. Okay. Artemis turned to stare at him. That's it. Just, okay. What do you want me to say? Marcus asked. That I'm shocked. That I don't trust you anymore. That you should leave the team. Maybe. Yes. Something other than, okay. Marcus turned to face her fully. Artemis, you just told me your father is one of the most dangerous assassins in the world. You're clearly terrified that this information will destroy your place on the team. The last thing you need is me making it worse by overreacting. But you're not. Upset. Suspicious. Worried I'm going to betray everyone. Are you going to betray everyone? No. Then why would I be worried about it? Marcus asked. You're not your father, Artemis. You're you. And, you, is someone who's saved my life at least 3 times in the past 2 weeks. Tears gathered in the corners of her eyes. It's not that simple. Isn't it? Marcus shifted to face her more directly. Look, I get that family stuff is complicated. Trust me on that one. But here's what I know about you. You're brave, you're skilled, you care about protecting innocent people, and you've consistently chosen to do the right thing even when it's hard. That's who you are. Everything else is just context. The team won't see it that way, Artemis said quietly. Some of them might not, initially, Marcus admitted. But the people who matter will come around. And the ones who don't, well, their opinion says more about them than it does about you. You really believe that? Marcus thought about his own secret, about being a 26-year-old office worker trapped in a teenager's body with knowledge of future events that could reshape the timeline. About the weight of pretending to be someone he wasn't while genuinely caring about people who were technically fictional. I believe that everyone deserves a chance to be judged by their own actions, he said. Not their family's mistakes, not their past circumstances, not other people's expectations. Just who they choose to be. Artemis wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. Thank you. For what? For not making this harder than it already is. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun set over the Atlantic. Eventually, Artemis spoke again. Batman knows, doesn't he? Probably, Marcus admitted. He's Batman. He knows everything eventually. What do you think he'll do? Marcus considered the question. In the original timeline, Batman had eventually revealed Artemis's secret to the team during a crisis, using it as a test of their trust and unity. It had worked out, but not without causing significant trauma and relationship damage. I think he'll use the information when he thinks it's most strategically advantageous, Marcus said carefully. The question is whether we can control when and how that happens. You're part of the team, Marcus said simply. That makes your problems our problems. Besides, keeping secrets is exhausting. Trust me on that one. Artemis gave him a curious look. Speaking from experience. More than you know. Everyone's got secrets they're not ready to share. The trick is making sure those secrets don't poison the relationships that matter. Is that what you're doing? Managing your secrets so they don't hurt the team. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. Artemis was more perceptive than he'd given her credit for. Something like that, he said. Want to talk about it? For a moment, Marcus was genuinely tempted. The weight of his meta-knowledge was becoming harder to bear, and Artemis had just trusted him with her deepest secret. It would be so easy to reciprocate, to tell someone, anyone, the truth about his situation. But he couldn't. Not without risking everything he'd worked to build with the team. Maybe someday, he said instead. When I'm ready. Fair enough, Artemis replied. But when that day comes, I'll be here. You listened when I needed to talk. I can do the same for you. Thanks, Marcus said, and meant it. That actually means a lot. As they walked back toward Mount Justice, Marcus found himself thinking about trust, secrets, and the complicated mathematics of relationships. He'd helped Artemis feel more secure about her place on the team, but in doing so, he'd also created a debt of emotional honesty that he couldn't repay without revealing his own impossible truth. The web gets more tangled every day, he thought. But maybe that's okay. Maybe some webs are worth getting caught in. Chapter 7, Supergirl and the Kryptonian Equation. Marcus knew Kara Zor-El was coming to Earth 3 days before she arrived, which gave him exactly 3 days to figure out how to handle the most dangerous addition to his increasingly complicated life. It wasn't that Supergirl was dangerous in the traditional sense, though her power levels were definitely concerning. It was that she represented the first real test of his meta-knowledge in a romantic context, and Marcus was fairly certain he was going to fail spectacularly. The advance warning came during what should have been a routine Justice League briefing. Superman stood at the head of the conference table in the watchtower, his expression unusually serious even by his standards. 3 days ago, we detected a Kryptonian escape pod entering Earth's solar system, he announced. The occupant is my cousin, Kara Zor-El. She was sent from Krypton shortly before its destruction, but her pod was knocked off course and trapped in suspended animation. Batman, predictably, cut straight to the tactical implications. Her knowledge of Kryptonian technology and culture could be valuable. It could also be dangerous if she's been compromised. She hasn't been compromised, Superman said firmly. She's family. Famous last words, Marcus thought, remembering Kara's initial struggle with Earth culture and her occasional lapses in judgment. Also, she's going to be gorgeous, powerful, and probably interested in the cute speedster who makes her laugh. This is going to be a disaster. Where will she be staying? Wonder Woman asked. Initially, with me in Metropolis, Superman replied. But I'd like her to spend time with the team as well. She's roughly their age, and she could benefit from peer interaction as she adjusts to Earth. Aqualad nodded thoughtfully. We would be honored to assist with her integration. I'm sure you would, Robin muttered under his breath, earning a sharp look from Batman. After the briefing, Marcus found himself walking the halls of the Watchtower in a mild panic. He'd been managing his meta-knowledge reasonably well so far, but adding Supergirl to the equation introduced variables he wasn't sure he could control. First, there was the obvious attraction factor. Marcus had been a 26-year-old man before his dimensional displacement, and maintaining appropriate boundaries with his technically teenage teammates required constant vigilance. Adding a Kryptonian blonde who looked like she'd stepped out of a fitness magazine was going to make that exponentially more difficult. Second, there was the power imbalance issue. Supergirl was quite possibly the most powerful person on the team, which meant traditional leadership dynamics wouldn't apply. She could literally bench press the entire rest of the team combined, and that kind of raw capability tended to create its own social pressures. Third, and most concerning, there was the cultural integration challenge. Kara would be struggling with Earth customs, social norms, and emotional regulation. In the original timeline, that struggle had led to several near disasters and at least one actual romantic subplot that Marcus really didn't want to think about. I need a strategy, he decided. Something that helps her adjust without getting me killed, the team destabilized, or the timeline completely screwed. The strategy, when it came to him, was elegantly simple: treat her like a person instead of a demographic. It sounded obvious, but Marcus had noticed that most people reacted to Supergirl in one of three ways: as Superman's cousin, and therefore defined by that relationship, as an incredibly powerful alien, and therefore potentially dangerous, or as an attractive young woman, and therefore primarily valuable for romantic potential. None of those approaches treated her as Kara Zor-El, individual person with her own thoughts, feelings, and agency. Be her friend first, Marcus decided. Everything else can wait. 3 days later, he stood with the rest of the team in Mount Justice's main hangar, watching the Zeta Beam platform cycle up for Supergirl's arrival. Recognized, Superman, 01. Supergirl, B08. She stepped through the light beside her cousin, and Marcus felt his carefully prepared mental strategies evaporate like morning dew. Supergirl was radiant. That was the only word for it. Blonde hair that caught the cave's ambient lighting like spun gold, blue eyes that seemed to hold their own internal light source, and a smile that could have powered the eastern seaboard. She wore a modified version of Superman's costume, blue and red with the House of El crest prominently displayed, but somehow made it look both powerful and approachable. More than her appearance, though, was her presence. There was something about the way she moved, the way she held herself, that suggested enormous power held in careful check. Like watching a nuclear reactor walking around in human form. Team, Superman said, I'd like you to meet my cousin, Kara Zor-El. Supergirl. Hi everyone, Kara said, her voice carrying a slight accent that Marcus couldn't place but found oddly charming. Cal has told me so much about you. I'm excited to work together. The introductions went around the circle. Robin with his typical theatrical flair, Aqualad with formal politeness, Superboy with visible discomfort at meeting another Kryptonian, Miss Martian with genuine enthusiasm, and Artemis with cautious friendliness. When it was Marcus's turn, he stepped forward and offered a simple handshake. Kid Flash, he said. Welcome to Earth, Kara. Hope you're ready for controlled chaos and questionable decision-making. She laughed, a sound like silver bells mixed with genuine amusement. That's exactly what Cal said you'd say. Superman talks about me, Marcus asked, genuinely surprised. He says you're the tactical heart of the team, Kara replied. Always thinking 3 moves ahead. Marcus felt his cheeks warm slightly. That's probably an exaggeration. Is it? She tilted her head, studying him with those impossibly blue eyes. I look forward to seeing for myself. There was something in her tone that suggested she wasn't just talking about tactics, and Marcus felt his carefully prepared emotional defenses start to crack. This is going to be a problem. Asterisk. Chapter 8, Cultural Exchange Program. Integrating Supergirl into the team turned out to be simultaneously easier and more complicated than Marcus had anticipated. Easier because Kara was genuinely likable, enthusiastic without being naive, powerful without being arrogant, and possessed of a dry sense of humor that caught everyone off guard. She adapted to Earth customs with surprising speed and showed remarkable patience with the team's more chaotic moments. More complicated because she was also incredibly perceptive, asked uncomfortable questions, and had a tendency to look at Marcus like she was trying to solve a particularly interesting puzzle. Your fighting style is unusual for a speedster, she observed during a training session in their second week together. Marcus paused in his post-workout stretching routine. How so? Most speedsters rely primarily on velocity and momentum, Kara explained, floating cross-legged in the air beside him in a casual display of impossible physics. You use speed as one tool among many, but your real strength is pattern recognition and tactical adaptation. That's actually a pretty accurate assessment, Marcus admitted. It's like watching someone play chess at super speed, she continued. Not just moving fast, but thinking fast. Seeing connections others miss. Marcus tried to ignore the way her costume clung to her figure as she gestured, focusing instead on the intellectual content of her observation. Speed without strategy is just running in circles, he said. Literally, in my case. Is that a Barry Allen philosophy, or a Marcus Chen philosophy? Marcus froze. What did you call me? Marcus Chen, Kara repeated, her expression curious rather than accusatory. That's your real name, isn't it? I have excellent hearing, I've caught fragments of conversations where people use it. Shit, of course she has super hearing. Marcus tried to arrange his features into something resembling calm. Most people here use codenames, he said carefully. Most people here aren't Kryptonian, Kara replied. On Krypton, we believed names had power. Real names create real connections between people. And what kind of connection are you looking for? Marcus asked, then immediately regretted the question. It sounded flirtier than he'd intended. Kara's smile was radiant, the kind where we can be honest with each other. Before Marcus could respond, Robin's voice echoed through the training area. Team meeting in 5 minutes. We've got a situation in Star City. Saved by the mission briefing, Marcus had never been so grateful for superhero emergencies. The situation in Star City turned out to be more complex than their usual assignments. A new villain calling himself Dr. Psycho was using advanced technology to manipulate civilians' emotional states, creating chaos throughout the downtown area. His equipment appears to be some kind of psychic amplifier, Batman explained during the briefing. He can induce rage, fear, or euphoria in large groups simultaneously. Crowd control nightmare, Artemis observed. Worse than that, Marcus said, studying the tactical display. He's not just creating random chaos. Look at the pattern of incidents. The team gathered around the holographic map as Marcus highlighted Dr. Psycho's targets. Bank District, City Hall, Police Headquarters, and the courthouse, he continued. He's not trying to cause general mayhem, he's systematically destabilizing Star City's infrastructure. To what end? Aqualad asked. Unknown, Batman replied, but the pattern suggests a larger plan in motion. Or a distraction, Supergirl said thoughtfully. If everyone's focused on the emotional manipulation, they might miss something else happening simultaneously. Marcus glanced at her, impressed. That's exactly what I was thinking. Great minds, she said with a smile that made his stomach do interesting things. Focus, Chen. Lives are at stake. Asterisk. The mission plan was straightforward. Contain Dr. Psyche's emotional manipulation while identifying his true objective. Marcus found himself paired with Supergirl for aerial reconnaissance, a logical choice given their complementary abilities, but one that made his pulse quicken for reasons having nothing to do with mission adrenaline. Flying through Star City's skyline beside Supergirl was an surreal experience. She moved through the air with the same fluid grace that Aqualad displayed underwater, making it look effortless despite the obvious violation of several laws of physics. This is amazing, she said as they soared between skyscrapers. I can see why you love the speed. It's not quite the same, Marcus replied, matching her pace easily. You're flying, I'm just running on air molecules. Show me. What? Show me how you run on air, Kara said. I want to understand how it works. Marcus considered the request. His speed-based pseudo-flight was one of his more advanced techniques, requiring precise control of his vibrational frequency to maintain stability in three-dimensional space. It's all about finding the right resonance, he explained, demonstrating by running a spiral pattern around her position. Air molecules have mass, just not much. If you can vibrate at the correct frequency, you can create enough molecular friction to generate lift and thrust. That's incredible, Kara said, watching his movement pattern with obvious fascination. You're basically creating a localized physics exception through pure kinetic manipulation. That's actually a really good way to put it, Marcus said, genuinely impressed by her insight. Most people just assume it's speedster magic and move on. I'm not most people, Kara replied, and there was something in her tone that made Marcus's chest tighten. Before he could respond, his comm crackled to life. KF, Supergirl, we've got eyes on Dr. Psycho, Robin's voice reported. He's holed up in the old Ferris Industries building, and he's got hostages. On our way, Marcus replied, grateful for the distraction from whatever emotional moment had been building. The Ferris Industries building was a 30-story monument to 1960s corporate architecture, all steel and glass and imposing geometric lines. Dr. Psycho had fortified the top 3 floors with some kind of energy barrier that crackled with psychic interference. I can't get a clear read on the hostage situation, Miss Martian reported over comms. His psychic amplifier is creating too much mental static. Physical reconnaissance then, Aqualad decided. Kid Flash, can you get inside without triggering his defenses? Probably, Marcus replied, studying the building's structure. But if he's got psychic detection capabilities, he'll know I'm coming. I could provide a distraction, Supergirl offered. Draw his attention while you infiltrate. Too risky, Marcus said immediately. If his emotion manipulation works on Kryptonians, you could end up as another hostage. I can handle some emotional manipulation, Kara said with a slight edge to her voice. It's not about what you can handle, Marcus replied. It's about smart tactical deployment. We need your strength as a backup plan, not as the opening gambit. Kara stared at him for a moment, something unreadable in her expression. You're protecting me, she said. I'm protecting the mission, Marcus corrected. Which includes all team members. Including me specifically. Why does she have to be so perceptive? Yes, including you specifically. Problem with that? No, Kara said softly. No problem. Just interesting. Before Marcus could ask what she meant by that, the building's psychic barrier flared brighter, and screams echoed from the upper floors. Change of plans, he said grimly. We're out of time for subtle approaches. Chapter 9, Emotional Resonance. The assault on Dr. Psyche's stronghold went sideways almost immediately. Marcus had made it 3 floors into the building before the psychic amplifier hit him with a wave of artificial euphoria so intense that he nearly vibrated himself through the wall by accident. Only years of corporate meditation classes, and the existential dread of being trapped in a teenager's body, gave him enough emotional grounding to resist the manipulation. KF, report, Aqualad's voice crackled through his comm. The psychic field is stronger than we anticipated, Marcus replied, steadying himself against a wall as another wave of artificial emotion washed over him. It's not just emotional manipulation, it's sensory overload. He's weaponizing dopamine. Can you continue? Marcus tested his motor control by running a quick perimeter of the floor. The euphoria was manageable, but it was affecting his reaction time and decision-making process. Affirmative, but I'll need backup. If this gets worse, I might not be able to. The building shook as something impacted the exterior wall with tremendous force. Through the windows, Marcus could see Supergirl grappling with what appeared to be a 30-foot-tall robot that definitely hadn't been in the mission briefing. Where the hell did that come from? Artemis's voice demanded over comms. Dr. Psycho's backup plan, Robin replied grimly. Looks like he's got more than just psychic manipulation in his arsenal. Marcus watched Supergirl trade punches with the giant robot, her movements slightly erratic in a way that suggested the psychic field was affecting her as well. Every impact sent shockwaves through the building's structure, and he could hear glass breaking on multiple floors. She's fighting while emotionally compromised. This is going to end badly. Asterisk. Supergirl, fall back, he said into his comm. The psychic field is affecting your judgment. I'm fine, Kara replied, but her voice carried an edge of artificial anger that confirmed Marcus's suspicions. The robot landed a solid hit that sent her crashing through 2 buildings before she managed to arrest her momentum. Marcus felt something cold and sharp twist in his chest as he watched her struggle to regain altitude. Enough of this. Asterisk. He abandoned stealth entirely, vibrating through the building's floors in a straight vertical line toward Dr. Psycho's position. The psychic interference grew stronger with each level, waves of euphoria and rage and fear washing over him in nauseating succession. By the time he reached the 30th floor, Marcus felt like he'd been through an emotional blender, but his tactical mind was still functioning. Dr. Psycho stood in the center of a room full of sophisticated equipment, his hands dancing over controls that fed into a massive psychic amplifier. "Ah, the speedster," Dr. Psycho said without turning around. He was smaller than Marcus had expected, maybe 5'6", balding, with the kind of soft physique that suggested too much time spent in laboratories. Right on schedule. Release the hostages, Marcus said, trying to ignore the artificial wave of rage that washed over him as he spoke. Hostages. Dr. Psycho laughed. There are no hostages, boy. Just test subjects for my emotional manipulation research. Marcus felt his blood pressure spike, part artificial anger, part genuine fury. Test subjects. The people of Star City have proven remarkably useful for calibrating my equipment, Dr. Psycho continued conversationally. Did you know that induced euphoria increases compliance by 73%? Or that targeted fear responses can paralyze motor function for up to 40 minutes? Another building-shaking impact reminded Marcus that Supergirl was still fighting the robot while emotionally compromised. He needed to end this quickly. Here's what's going to happen, Marcus said, his voice taking on the cold, calculated tone he'd perfected during particularly difficult board meetings. You're going to shut down your equipment, surrender peacefully, and hope that I'm feeling merciful when this is over. Dr. Psycho finally turned to face him, and Marcus was disturbed to see genuine amusement in the man's eyes. Or what? You'll run in circles until I get dizzy. Or I'll show you what happens when someone with super speed gets really, genuinely angry. The threat might have been more effective if Marcus hadn't been hit by another wave of artificial euphoria at exactly that moment. Instead of intimidating, he probably looked like he was high. Dr. Psycho's laughter confirmed this impression. Your emotional control is admirable, speedster, but ultimately irrelevant. My amplifier doesn't just manipulate emotions, it amplifies existing ones. And right now, I can sense your concern for the Kryptonian girl fighting my robot. Marcus felt his chest tighten. What? She's quite striking, isn't she? All that power, all that beauty, fighting desperately while my psychic field slowly drives her into an uncontrollable rage. How long do you think before she loses control completely? As if summoned by his words, another impact shook the building, followed by the sound of Supergirl shouting something in what sounded like Kryptonian. She's already losing her grip on Earth languages, Dr. Psycho observed with clinical interest. Fascinating how quickly Kryptonian psychology reverts to primal responses under emotional stress. Marcus felt something cold and dangerous settle in his chest. It wasn't artificial emotion from the psychic amplifier, it was his own protective instincts crystallizing into something sharp and focused. "You're done," he said quietly. "Am I?" Marcus moved. Not super speed, that would have been too quick, too merciful. Instead, he moved just fast enough to be everywhere Dr. Psycho looked while still being slow enough for the man to see what was coming. He dismantled the psychic amplifier piece by piece, component by component, wire by wire. Not destroying it, that might have caused feedback that hurt the people still affected by its influence. Instead, methodically disabling it while Dr. Psycho watched in growing horror. "Stop," Dr. Psycho said as Marcus pulled apart the central processing unit. "You don't understand the delicate calibration required." "I understand that you're using people as test subjects," Marcus replied, continuing his work. "I understand that you're endangering my teammate. And I understand that if anything happens to her because of your equipment, I'm going to make you very, very sorry." The psychic field collapsed as the amplifier went offline, and Marcus immediately felt the artificial emotions drain away. The clarity was like surfacing from deep water, sudden, complete, and slightly disorienting. Outside, the sounds of combat stopped abruptly. "Supergirl, report," Marcus said into his comm. Wow." Kara's voice carried surprise and embarrassment in equal measure. "That was intense. The robot shut down when the psychic field collapsed. I think it was being controlled remotely." "Are you injured?" "No, just confused. For a few minutes there, I wasn't thinking clearly. Everything felt amplified and urgent and," she paused. "Are you okay? You sound different." Marcus realized he was still staring at Dr. Psycho with an expression that probably qualified as actively threatening. "I'm fine," he said, forcing his voice back to normal. "The psychic field was affecting everyone. The important thing is that it's over now." "Indeed it is," Dr. Psycho said bitterly. "Though you may have won this battle, Speedster, you've learned something interesting about yourself in the process. Which is how much you care about the Kryptonian girl. That kind of emotional investment can be quite dangerous in our line of work." Marcus felt his jaw tighten. "Caring about your teammates isn't a weakness. Isn't it?" Dr. Psycho smiled unpleasantly. "We'll see, won't we?" 20 minutes later, Dr. Psycho was in custody and the team was conducting their post-mission debrief in the bioship. Marcus found himself sitting across from Supergirl, trying not to think about Dr. Psycho's parting words. "That was well done," Aqualad said, addressing the team as a whole. "The psychic manipulation created significant tactical challenges, but everyone adapted effectively." "KF's technical work was impressive," Robin added. "Disabling that amplifier without causing feedback couldn't have been easy." "Just following the wiring," Marcus said modestly. "Basic electronics, really. Basic electronics that required superhuman speed and precision to implement safely," Kara pointed out. "Don't downplay your contribution." Their eyes met across the bioship's cabin, and Marcus felt that familiar tightening in his chest. There was something in her expression, gratitude, maybe, or interest, or something more complicated that he wasn't ready to analyze. "Team effort," he said finally. "Everyone did their part. Some more than others," Artemis observed with a knowing smile. As the bioship flew back toward Mount Justice, Marcus found himself thinking about emotional resonance, tactical decisions, and the increasingly complicated mathematics of caring about people who were technically fictional but felt more real than most of his previous relationships. "This is getting out of hand," he thought. "But maybe that's not entirely a bad thing." Chapter 10, The Diana Prince Complication. Marcus thought he'd reached the upper limit of his ability to handle beautiful, powerful women joining his daily life. Then Wonder Woman started spending time at Mount Justice, and he realized he'd been adorably naive about his own emotional capacity. It started innocently enough. Diana had volunteered to help with the team's combat training, reasoning that her experience with both individual and group tactics would be valuable for their development. What she didn't mention, but what Marcus immediately understood, was that she wanted to evaluate the team's readiness for larger-scale conflicts. "Today we will focus on coordination under pressure," Diana announced as the team assembled in the training area. She wore a modified version of her iconic costume, still unmistakably Wonder Woman, but adapted for the more intensive physical training she had planned. Marcus tried very hard not to stare and failed completely. Wonder Woman was magnificent. That was the only word that adequately captured her presence. Tall, athletic, beautiful in a way that seemed almost abstract, like someone had decided to sculpt the concept of feminine power and then given it life. But more than her appearance was her bearing, the confidence of someone who had faced gods and monsters and emerged victorious. "Kid Flash," she said, and Marcus realized she'd been talking to him. "Yes, ma'am," he replied, hoping his voice sounded steadier than it felt. "You will be coordinating today's exercise," Diana continued. "I want to observe how the team responds to tactical leadership under combat conditions." "Oh great. Perform tactical magic in front of Wonder Woman while trying not to embarrass myself. This should go well. Asterisk. The exercise itself was brutal, a multi-stage combat scenario that required the team to work together against increasingly complex challenges while adapting to changing conditions. Marcus found himself having to think 3 moves ahead while calling out instructions, adjusting strategies on the fly, and trying to ignore the way Diana watched his every decision with those penetrating dark eyes. Supergirl, high cover on Robin's infiltration. Artemis, suppressing fire on the eastern approach. Aqualad, can you pause, Diana said, her voice cutting through the simulation. Marcus felt his stomach drop. Did I make a mistake? No, Diana replied, studying the tactical display. But you are thinking too defensively. This team has considerable offensive capabilities. Why are you not utilizing them? Because defensive coordination minimizes casualties, Marcus replied. Everyone goes home in one piece. And if the enemy is too strong for defensive measures, if the only way to protect innocent lives is to take calculated risks. Marcus met her gaze directly. Then you take the risks yourself and trust your team to adapt. Something shifted in Diana's expression. Elaborate. Leadership isn't about having all the answers, Marcus said, feeling like he was taking some kind of test. It's about making the hard decisions so other people don't have to. If someone needs to take a dangerous assignment, the leader goes first. If someone needs to make a sacrifice, the leader volunteers. You don't ask people to do things you wouldn't do yourself. Diana was quiet for a long moment, studying him with an intensity that made Marcus feel like she was reading his soul. Resume the exercise, she said finally. This time, trust your team's abilities. The second run went much better. Marcus adjusted his tactical approach to be more aggressive, utilizing each team member's strengths more effectively and accepting higher risk in exchange for faster resolution. It felt uncomfortable. Every instinct he developed as a corporate manager screamed against exposing his people to unnecessary danger, but the results spoke for themselves. Much better, Diana said as the simulation ended. Your instincts for protection are admirable, but sometimes the kindest thing a leader can do is trust their people to be heroes. After the training session, Marcus found himself alone with Diana in the cave's main living area, sharing what had apparently become a tradition of post-workout protein smoothies. The domestic normalcy of it was surreal, sitting across from one of the most powerful beings on Earth, discussing training techniques while she drank a strawberry banana smoothie through a straw. You have an unusual approach to leadership, Diana observed.